Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Travel Talk, a series by Trip 101 where we talk to different travelers and area experts from across the world. My name is Nirja, and I'm based in the coastal state of Goa in India. I'm an editor by profession, but I love traveling. I like to learn about different places and cultures and just talking to diverse people. So, for today, we will be discussing a beautiful country. It's located in southeastern Europe. It's called Bulgaria. So, this country is known for its architecture, food, and warmth. We also have Anna joining us today, who will tell us more about the country in general as well as two of its most famous cities, Sofia and Bansko. So, please introduce yourself, Anna.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. My name's Anna Duke. I'm a travel content creator and YouTuber. I'm Canadian and I've been exploring Europe and the many countries and cultures that are in Europe for the last 2.5 years as a digital nomad. And I had the privilege of visiting Bulgaria earlier this year in February and March, as well as spent some time in June in Bulgaria. So I actually went back, which is always a good sign of a country.
Yes. When I was looking at your Instagram, which is full of beautiful pictures, made me very envious of you. But I noticed that you travel to a lot of countries.
Yeah, I've been to a lot of countries. So I'm totaling 29 countries as of
Wow.
last week. Most of them, again, being Europe. I haven't been to South America or Asia or Africa yet, I shall say. And I think the reason why I've positively been stuck in Europe is there's so many cultures that are just a few hours away. So, and 1 hour bus ride sometimes can take you from one complete different language and culture to another one.
Right.
And between Eastern and Western and Central Europe, there's so much to discover. So I've kind of gotten stuck here, but I'm really enjoying my time.
I'm so glad. I mean, yeah, 29 countries is such an enviable achievement. You must have been
It's
exposed to.
I think definitely there's a competition for country counting, so I try not to feed into that competition, but it's always fun to explore a new place and compare it to other places.
Perfect. So, what kind of traveler are you? Do you go by yourself or with friends, family?
Yeah, I still identify myself as a solo traveler primarily. And I say that because my trajectory is never always with someone. So I've been really lucky, I'd say more in the last 9 months, that I either have met friends and been able to meet up with them, being part of more of the digital nomad community. I've been able to connect with people through co-working and then meeting them later in a different country. But my baseline itinerary is still just myself solo traveling, and it's really fun. I get to meet new people, I get to see old friends, new friends, and yeah, it's an adventure in itself, and
Right.
it's a lot of work on your own, but I do that. I have complete freedom to make decisions what I do.
Yeah, solo traveling is always best. And how do you select the cities or the places you go to? Or I mean, do you just take a map and just put stacks on it and just go there? Or do you plan your adventure?
Yeah, it's hard to say because, for example, even Bulgaria, which we'll talk about, some friends from home or other travelers said, "Why
Right.
Bulgaria?" And I said, "Let me discover why or why not." So I think for me, I continue to want to explore new European countries. And that leads me to just going and discovering if I like it or there's something that really appeals to me, whether it be the food or the
Right.
people or the landscape. And then I decide from there how long maybe to stay or if I want to return. So I think there's never really one thing that draws me to a place. And I think as a remote worker, I need a place to live and work.
Right.
And so it's just a matter of finding the next like apartment or space to live to feel like you're kind of, I'm in between a tourist and an expat. So I'm not quite the tourist
Right.
that's there for a couple of days and I'm not quite the long-term expat.
Okay, that is the perfect answer. How long was your trip in Bulgaria exactly?
Yeah, so I stayed in Bulgaria in the city of Sofia for February and March of this year, so 2024.
Right.
I actually was doing a volunteer experience with a co-living and co-working there. And then I found myself returning in June of this year. I didn't have plans to stay in Sofia for long. It was kind of actually a base to get to Greece. And then after I went on a vacation to Greece, I decided to stay a little bit longer and made my way back to the town. I don't think it's quite a city yet because it is quite
Okay.
small of Bansko. So yeah, I've kind of been back 2.5, 3 times, you could say.
Wow. So initially, when you planned your trip, what were you exactly expecting out of it?
Nothing. To be honest, I think it's best to go into a destination with a clear mind. I will be honest, the image I had in my head of Bulgaria was
Yes.
I dated someone like 8 years ago, went on a couple dates with a guy whose parents were Bulgarian, and that's all I had in my head. And he might watch this eventually, which would be funny. But I just had that image, and I didn't really have, I just pictured this rugged landscape. And then when I arrived to Sofia, I was so impressed by the
Right.
transportation, the food scene, the architecture, the different landscapes. There's tons of parks. And I just was surprised. The language is definitely different because it's the Cyrillic. I'm really bad at pronouncing that. The language is definitely different, but everyone spoke English. I just was blown away. My initial expectations were nothing. I knew I was going to a co-living space, so I guess on that front, I was expecting
Okay.
this kind of international experience, being a co-living in a co-working space. But yeah, I was taken away. It was a bit cold when I arrived because it's still February, but there's no snow on the city. The mountains still
Okay.
had a bit of snow. But for me, that's kind of a reminder of home in Canada. So I like it.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to. I've never seen snow being in a really hot place in
Mm,
India, but yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that would attract me to any place.
yeah.
And it's also really great to go anywhere like a blank canvas and then just let the city color you. So that's amazing too.
Mm.
So you travel to two cities, right? Sofia and Bansko.
Yeah. So in March, I was primarily in Sofia and I did
Okay.
my first solo travel weekend trip, we can call it, to Bansko. I had heard about this town. I heard it was a really big hub for digital nomads. And I said, okay, let me go discover what's there. Now, Bansko itself was really known as a ski town. And this year they had
Okay.
the World Cup downhill ski
Wow.
racing, actually. Yeah, it was really cool. So it's been known as a ski town and it definitely draws Westerners to come. It's much more affordable than skiing
Right.
in other places like Austria and Switzerland. And when I arrived, I was like, what's here? There's nothing here. Like later on, I'll have a vlog come out about it of my time. And I was just traveling by myself. There wasn't anything that drew me to the food. There's a really interesting old town. So you definitely got an authentic Bulgarian
Okay.
experience where people don't speak English in a good way. And you
Okay.
saw maybe an older generation. When the opportunity to go back in June, when the Bansko Digital Nomad Festival was happening, I was like, oh, I don't know. Like, I didn't really like it in March. I don't understand why people love it so much. I don't get it. It's such a small town. There's no public
Oh,
transportation.
okay.
It's a bit difficult to get to. So I would say my opinion changed, and we can dive into that because I think it's a place where an international community
Okay.
exists. So if you're interested in visiting a place where you can learn from other travelers, I think it's
Mm-hmm.
a really unique destination. But in terms of an actual destination itself, I don't know how much appeal there is to Bansko besides a great place to do some hiking and there's a
Okay.
beautiful river. So it's kind of it's a quiet space, and if you're looking for a little bit of a quiet retreat in the off season, so their off season is summer because
Okay.
in winter is when the ski hill happens.
Yes.
So that's actually their high season. So the nomads have kind of filled the other season, and it's I think it's definitely been an interesting pull of how bands goes
Okay.
become busier.
Right. So my next question was, I mean, you already answered it, but I just wanted to know, like, what were the different vibes between both the city? Because I assume that one is like more, famous, more tourist oriented, and as you said, Bansko is more for those people looking for quiet adventures.
Yeah, so Sofia is a city. It's
Okay.
as simple as that. There's public transportation, there's multiple types of food, there's
Yes.
shopping malls, there's different neighborhoods, there's the more wealthy area, the more poor area, the student
Right.
area, there's a huge university. So there's
Okay.
the Studentsky area, which is where a lot of people from smaller Bulgarian towns come and do university. And Bansko's a town. It's about a
Okay.
population of, I believe, like year round 10,000 people.
Wow.
So I would not compare them at all in terms of two cities. I think Bansko is a place prior to when Bulgaria became Schengen was a place where nomads could reset their Schengen days for those of us that have to watch our Schengen visas.
Okay.
So it's kind of a nothing town, like to be honest. And I want to paint a realistic picture. How it started was a German investor decided to create a co-living and co-working space there and saw an opportunity
Okay.
to bring a different economy to a small Bulgarian town. But I mean, I'm not sure in India, but in Canada, I can think of some towns where there's just absolutely nothing there. And someone's come in and made an appeal
Yes.
where there's good Wi-Fi and good living conditions for nomads to come and live for longer term. So I think it's really for travelers who are looking for something longer term to experience living somewhere, but there's not a lot to do. So
Okay.
in Sofia, you get the nightlife, you get the day life, you can walk in a park, you can participate in local festivities. And in Bansko, you have to choose your own adventure. You have to make the hikes happen. You have to
Right.
make the cold plunges happen because there's not a lot happening in terms of the city providing those activities.
Right. To be honest, Vansko sounds very interesting. Ironically, it really kind of sounds
Yeah.
like a location with a lot of DIY kind of thing. So it sounds very interesting
Yeah.
so far.
Yeah, it's come up. There's multiple co-working spaces. Again, like it's really, I've spoken to local Bulgarian friends with my
Okay.
time spending 2 months early in the year. I asked my Bulgarian friends and staff that were working at that co-working in Sofia how they felt about such an international community coming into this type of economy.
Hmm.
And for them, it's a plus side. So they all spoke highly about the benefits of an
Right.
international and expat and nomad community coming into what was just this tiny small ski town. It builds opportunity for keeping the restaurants open year
Yes.
round. It brings new money in. You can rent things out. But the flip side to that is it raises the prices of local accommodations for
Okay.
locals and potentially can create controversy. So far, it's working
Uh-huh.
really well. And I think they like the influx of international people and the business it brings to help the Bulgarian economy and government and systems like that.
Okay. So that was a great introduction on both the cities. Let's get deeper into your itinerary. If you could tell me what are the famous things that one should do in both the cities individually?
Oh my gosh, they're so hard to speak differently about. So Bansko, I think, join the digital nomad community, even if you're not a nomad or remote worker.
Okay.
And whatever's happening with the group is what's happening. So there's one walking tour you should do. There's a clock tower, but that's about it. There's like a river you can explore, but it's really just exploring the town and the surrounding
Right.
area. It's not big, it's all walkable, but again, there's not the option to take public
Okay.
transportation there. A lot of people rent bikes. Whereas Sofia, I could do a whole interview on itself. So Sofia has their main cathedral, the Nevsky Cathedral, or
Yes.
forgive me, it's not cathedral because it's not Catholic, Orthodox Christian. There's just the Russian churches as well. There's the parliament buildings. There's the influence of the Parisian and Austrian architecture mixed with the
Nice.
communist buildings. So I think it's important to not only stay in the city center, but go to some of the surrounding areas to see the difference in architecture and
Right.
time and history and take a walking tour, take some kind of tour to learn the brief overview of history. There's also Vitosha Mountain, which is accessible by public transportation. Vitosha, you can see from the city center and go hiking, which I did. It was really lovely, and you can see the city below. So there's
Wow.
so much to do because there's a variety of the nightlife is really good too. So if you like to
Okay.
dance or you like cocktails or food scene, there's just so much to do. But again, you've got I don't even know what the math is, like so much more population compared to this small, tiny
Yes.
town of Bansko.
Okay, can you walk me through your itinerary? What did you do on each week or each day? I mean, it would be too much, I know, but if you can just dense it down to your experience, what
Oh,
you saw there.
that's a hard one to cover. So for myself, because I'm a nomad, I
Yes.
work. So it's not a vacation. But when I was in Sofia for February and March for
Mhm.
2 months, most of my days was spent working part of the day and then either going to a local food spot, making some of my own food, exploring one area of the city. The weekends were really just about living as locally as I could. So
Okay.
it was great because I had the opportunity to hang out with local Bulgarians. So we would go to a bar on a Friday
Nice.
night and then enjoy some dancing. And maybe the next day we were hanging out in a local park, or I went to Vitosha Mountain, as I said.
Okay.
So I think there it's just about exploring different neighborhoods. And also, if there was a local festival happening, then trying to participate in that. And in Bansko is similar. Using the co-working spaces that
Uh-huh.
exist are really fantastic. And then just seeing what other people were doing. We did cold plunges in the morning, which were freezing. They had some parties. So it was like maybe, again, having some drinks outside. At that time, the Euro Cup was
Right.
happening. So that drove a lot of our gatherings, depending which country was playing and who was around, some competition there. So it's a mix of just, for me, it's really about this idea of immersing myself in a place. I come from the perspective of I'm living there a bit longer term. And so
Okay.
everything I do could be condensed, of course, in a few days or a week. But for me, it's about taking it slow and living a normal life on top of
Yes.
also getting to explore my new neighborhood.
So you said you took cold plunges in winter. I mean, you're brave. That's all I'd
Um,
say.
the cold plunges were happening this June. So it was about 18 degrees Celsius outside because we would do them in the morning, and the water was about 10 degrees Celsius.
Okay.
So the key to that is ask each other questions to distract one another. I have to say, it reminded me a lot of Canada, but I didn't do cold plunges in Canada. So the first morning I said, why am I doing one here? I wouldn't do this back home. Yeah. Anyway, really refreshing,
Mhm.
definitely on a hot day. But that's in Bansko. So there's a beautiful river there that you can go into. Yeah.
Okay. Did you plan anything to do in either of these cities or places, but you couldn't do?
Oh my gosh. I mean, Sofia, I feel there's so many places on my Google Map pins and I want to go eat still. I think the food scene is really well done,
Yes.
very plant-based friendly, or if you're gluten-free or have any kind of dietary restrictions, I think it's quite contemporary. Yet
Mhm.
on the flip side, you can get really local food, quick meats
That's
and
great.
potato kind of dishes. So there's so many food places, and then maybe just a couple more hikes on the surrounding mountains and getting to explore that. But
Okay.
I could definitely live in Sofia again. Bansko, I'm like not itching to return to. It just, I guess it would depend what friends are there. So it's so much more people driven. But again, the people are the expats. So it's a rotating community. Yeah, it's a much different. They're hard to speak in the same way because it's a much different experience.
Okay. Let's come to your accommodation. Can you walk us through where did you stay on in both the places? Because I have a lot of questions about accommodation there.
Yeah, so in Sofia, I stayed at a co-living and it's also a hotel. It's called Work Nomads. So shout out to them. You can stay there long term or short term. But I think things like Airbnb and booking.com are readily available in the city of Sofia. I've also stayed at the cutest studio Airbnb
Wow.
in the city center of Sofia, just off of Vitosha Boulevard, which is the main kind of picturesque boulevard that you see in a lot of photos.
Right.
So that's one of I would stay in that little studio again. It was like tiny and behind a restaurant, but had everything you needed. So I actually booked that place 3 times, I think, in total, because
That sounds fun.
I'd have one night stayovers and I'd be like, oh, I'll just stay at the same place. I know where it is, I know how everything works. And in Bansko, I was staying with a friend who had rented
Okay.
from a local. So I think in Bansko, a lot of people kind of owned property there, knowing that this nomad community was growing. And so I think the
Okay.
best way is trying to connect with the local, but that's also because normally we're staying longer term. So trying to
Hmm.
negotiate like a month's rent. When I did my little first trip earlier this year, I
Okay.
just booked a place with booking.com. So again, booking.com or Airbnb are probably the highest two. Really easy to find places.
Yes.
The availability is quite open as well. And it's busy, but it's not quite like Paris, Barcelona. This kind
Right.
of demand isn't as strong yet. And I think with the Schengen change as well earlier this year, it kind of changes the demand as well.
Okay. And would you say both the places are affordable? I know there's
Yeah, I
different
would.
degree of affordability, but in general.
Yeah, actually, they're quite. I think Bulgaria overall, I would say, is like, I think I find the pricing of Bansko to Sofia not crazy different going from a
Okay.
town to a city. I think overall it's very affordable. So
Right.
they use the leva there, and so about €1 is 2 leva. So it's quite easy to
Okay.
convert things. But eating out, you could get. I mean, you could have a full best comparison is like a pizza or a burger, something that we're quite all familiar with, and a beer. And I would say €10,
Oh, wow.
maybe 15 if you're at a fancy place. So that's also a huge appeal to go there is it's very affordable
Right.
and just reasonably priced. Like even a nice place, it was worth what you were paying for. So I always found the pricing to really reflect the quality of food or the type of place I was at. And
Okay, that's
then
great.
transit. It's less than €1 to take the bus or tram, and you can use your credit card. You can just tap your credit card
Okay.
and it'll never charge you more than €2 a day. It like
Wow.
caps it. Even if you take 20 trips, they have a system where it stops you and only charges you a day pass. And this is like no other cities
Yeah.
like this. Paris does not do this. Bucharest in Romania doesn't do this. Barcelona, like that is such an appeal. It makes it so easy as a foreigner to
Yes.
go around the city and just ride the bus and train as much as you want.
Yeah, it sounds very convenient. Yes,
Super.
definitely. About your accommodation, did they provide you with 3 meals a day, or how was the facilities there?
No.
Okay.
I think it'd be quite rare to find something that's full meal. I think you would be doing some kind of homestay in that scenario. There's definitely hotels that would be breakfast included. So if you're looking for, again, a
Mm-hmm.
short-term travel, there's hotels that can offer breakfast, but I think that's just like any place in Europe comparison. If you're doing like a hotel or a
Okay.
B&B versus renting, booking.com and Airbnb is often like booking an apartment where you're
Mm-hmm.
independently living from the host. And so I was responsible for all my own food.
Okay, that's great. And would you say the hotel that you stayed in Sofia, was it pet friendly and kid friendly as well?
I think it depends on the place. There definitely is pet friendly. Dogs are really popular. There's tons of cats as
Oh,
well.
wow.
But I think it just really depends. Yeah, you can, I'm sure you can filter. Kid friendly, yeah, there's tons of kids in Sofia. It's very family oriented. You see them all the time. Again, on
Mm-hmm.
that big boulevard, especially on the weekend, a lot of families really just get out because they do live, coming from a North American perspective, where we
Yes.
have maybe larger homes and we spend time more in our home. People are living in Europe in apartments, so they spend a lot more time outside of the house. So you
Okay.
see families. But I think you just have to ask your host and filter it by what your needs are.
Okay, perfect. Coming to food, I know Bulgaria is very famous for its food. So any cultural food that you could try there?
Oh, so I'm vegetarian. So just to
Ah,
give
okay.
context, there is plenty of meat dishes, and if you are a meat eater or a carnivore, there's lots of delicious meat dishes. And those of my friends that I would have meals with, they said that all the meat's so good, and they do beefs and stews and barbecue.
Right.
But I got to enjoy things like the cabbages and the potatoes, and they love like roasted pepper and eggplant, and then the
Yummy.
cheese is so good as well. So like their white cheese, soft cheese, it's so delicious. One of my favorite food items that have come out of traveling the Balkans is this spread, I suppose you could call it, called Ivar, which
Okay.
is kind of like a red pepper eggplant. And I probably use it different than the Bulgarians, but I like it on crackers. I use it as a pasta sauce sometimes. So that's one of my favorites. But it's really vegetarian friendly as well. So you
Yes.
could find like halloumi burgers or different wraps, less of the plant-based alternatives, so less of the kind
Okay.
of like tofu, seitan alternatives, but a lot of vegetarian friendly dishes. So very
That's great.
contemporary places. Yeah, I call them like hipster food spots. So you can find some of that. And then there's the banitsa, is this um phyllo pastry cheese
Okay.
bakery dish that's like €1. All the manitas is really yummy, and it's you can find it on almost every street corner. So yeah, the food's definitely good, and grocery stores are really accessible as well. So they have almost everything
Nice.
that you could want. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a vegetarian as well, so it's amazing to hear that more places are becoming accessible to people like us. Would you
Yeah.
also say that in general places in Bulgaria are more vegan friendly and gluten free friendly as well?
I think the vegan is a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
difficult because it's just that step above removing
Yeah.
cheese or dairy. I would say you can be vegan in Sofia for sure.
Okay.
In Bansko, there's for sure one bakery called Lubanica I can recommend that is vegan friendly, but they
Okay.
are quite a unique spot. I think you might have a little bit, even with English speakers, a little bit
Uh-huh.
more of a language barrier just to really make sure, because I have some vegan friends that are so particular. Like
Yes.
honey is really well used in the Balkans, and of course, some vegans don't eat honey.
Yep.
Gluten free as well. Again, in Bansko, I had a friend that was gluten free and she was able to find things, but I think you have to be knowledgeable about eating as a celiac or as a gluten free individual. So you need to
Right.
know what you can or cannot eat, because the menus might not say yes with gluten or without gluten. But something like risotto, you can definitely eat that, or You could find gluten-free pizza in Bansko even. There's a spot
Okay.
you can get that. So you have to work a little bit harder, but,
Uh-huh.
and I think just be patient. So be understanding that this is not how the Bulgarian food culture has been. It's
Okay.
new. They're not resistant to it, but if you came to me and asked me to cook one of your traditional dishes, I'd be like, I don't know how to do it, but I'm open to learn. So I think
Okay.
just if you have dietary restrictions, be patient, ask questions, and be flexible to maybe eat something a little different.
Okay, perfect. Bulgaria is friendly to different kind of cuisines, but it's still evolving in a nutshell. All right, great.
Mm-hmm.
Coming to do you think places where you stayed in particular friendly, where you could just take water from tap, or do you have to carry a water bottle around?
Yeah, so in Bansko, the water is super friendly to drink from the
Mm-hmm.
tap. You're in a mountain area, so you're getting mountain fed water and it's really lovely. In Sofia, I think it's debatable. So my
Uh-huh.
local Bulgarian friends don't like the tap water. Some people say, yeah, go ahead and drink it. I think by government officials, they said, yes, you can drink it.
Okay.
Some of the places, like at the co-living, they had a filtered system. So I was able to drink filtered water. So it's a little bit in between, but in general, yes, it's safe to drink the tap water. I would say if you're coming straight from your home country to Bulgaria, just be a bit cautious because it's just different water. So your stomach might be like, whoa, I'm not used to this. I come from Canada where we have really clean tap drinking water. I had already been in Europe drinking different waters for 4 or 5 months. So I think my stomach was like, yeah, whatever, it's another type of water. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's clean. It's clean overall. So I do want to emphasize that yes, you can drink the tap water, but
Okay.
just you can ask your host too, because maybe a building's old. So they're like, the pipes aren't great in the building. That
Okay.
doesn't mean that fed from the municipality isn't drinkable.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. Coming to shopping, I know a lot of people, if they go to different
Mm.
countries, they love to buy souvenirs. So, can you tell me what are the kind of things you were able to buy in Sofia or Bansko? I mean, if Bansko has places like these.
Yeah, Bansko definitely does. So just to re-emphasize, because Bansko is actually known for being that ski town, they
Right.
definitely have those tourist type shops. Sofia has obviously a larger plethora of options,
Mm-hmm.
and one of the big things is anything rose related. So every year in
Wow. Okay.
Bulgaria, there's a rose festival, so you can get rose oils, you can get rose stickers, soaps, body lotion, little souvenirs. I personally just always buy a sticker to put on my suitcase. Can't say I really bought anything from Bulgaria. I think I did buy some, and if a Bulgarian's watching, it's yeah. I forget between Bulgarian and Serbian, which is their like the American equivalent of moonshine. So it's their strong
Okay.
liquor, which is about 40%. Yeah, so I think I did bring when I left Bulgaria in March, I was going to
Mhm.
visit family in Germany and I brought them some rakia, but they never tried it. So
Okay.
I don't know if they liked it or not. But that's also like maybe the traditional liquor or beer or wine.
Uh-huh.
Bulgaria also produces beer and wines. Yeah, there's definitely like consumables that you can also have for gifts.
Perfect. I mean, is there a specific place that you can think of? You can find anything that you'd want.
So I bought
Mm-hmm.
shoes there. I bought a suitcase there for a friend. I think to remove the barrier, they don't have everything. Maybe not exactly the brand you're looking for, but
Okay.
every grocery store has every type of food. So Vitoja Boulevard is probably the biggest boulevard to get
Okay.
something souvenir. It's the center of the city. It's where all the
Right.
tourists walking tours start, and there's lots of food places, but there's tons of surrounding malls. Like I can think of 4 or 5 in the top of my head. So there's huge shopping malls if you need
Okay.
makeup or clothes or shoes. There's lots of options to go shopping.
Perfect. That's great. More shopping, the better.
Unless you have tight luggage like I do. So I
Ah,
actually don't shop
okay.
that much. So maybe I'm not the best. I can only buy a sticker because I have no space.
My stick is great too.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned that in Bansko, one would have to travel either by walking or rent a bike. Is there any
Hmm.
limitation, like you need an international driving license or something?
Not to my knowledge. I never rented a car in
Okay.
Bulgaria, but I don't believe you need an international driver's license. Getting to Bansko is a little bit of a tricky situation, though.
Okay.
There is regional buses that go from the Sofia Central Bus Station to Bansko. but there's really only one, maybe two companies, but one company for sure lists their travel online, but they only drive in the morning. So
Okay.
when I went to Bansko for the second time, I was arriving in the evening. And
Oh,
so then you're relying on taxi cabs to drive you from either Sofia or Blagovgrad is another small town.
uh-huh.
But language barrier with taxi cabs can be an issue. And then also cash versus credit cards. There's kind of this
Okay.
underlying, you have to be careful not to be scammed in
Mm-hmm.
Sofia for taxi cab. I'm going a little off topic, but there's two taxi apps that you can get. You can get
Okay.
Taxi Me and then Yellow Taxi as well. And those are great to use. And they accept credit card and it's a bit more reliable because there will be
Okay.
yellow taxis that aren't Yellow Taxi
Okay.
Company. These kind of people, it's like they just want cash and it's a little bit like the language barrier is harder. They most often won't speak English. So it's just a bit harder to communicate. So yeah, getting from Sofia to Bansko, the best way is to reach out again to this digital nomad community or your host or the co-living or the hotel,
Okay.
because they often will have taxi drivers that are people who are driving back and forth, and you can negotiate, usually paying a tax, but they will take euros sometimes as well. So then you don't have to get as many levas out.
Okay, I mean, that's some of the great tips. I mean, I really like that there's two different options for transportation, the app based. So that's great. That makes the place more accessible.
Yeah,
Um,
that's for, so those apps, just to reiterate, are for Sofia only in the
okay.
city. To get to Bansko, it's like a local connection you need to a taxi driver. And it's a roughly about 80 euros to get from Sofia to Bansko via taxi
Okay.
one way. The bus, I believe, is, I do my memory, like 10 to 15 euros. So it's really easy, like 2 to 3 hour bus
Yes.
ride, really lovely bus. But again, they're only coming in the morning. So if you fly into Sofia
Mm-hmm.
in the evening, maybe you need to stay one night in Sofia before you go to Bansko. So it's a little bit of a logistics game depending on your budget and
Yes.
how you want to get to a place.
But overall, it sounds accessible, both the places.
Mm-hmm.
So I know you did mention that you were a digital nomad. So Wi-Fi is an important aspect for you, right?
Yes, always.
And
Like
how
this
is
call.
the yeah? And how is the Wi-Fi situation in both the places?
Yes, in Sofia, because I was at a co-living, it's something that they definitely emphasized, and they
Mm-hmm.
knew that with remote workers and digital nomads, it's something we prioritize. So it was 10 out of 10 there. And when I stayed at that small Airbnb, it was okay. But if you moved
Okay.
to one spot in the room, it would sometimes drop. And in Bansko, again, at a co-working space, the Wi-Fi is absolutely pristine, but it's something that they're prioritizing. And at our accommodations, it could sometimes be slow if there was more than one person using it. So I think
Okay.
it's something to, if you are a remote worker or you're someone who needs to have an important phone call, whether it be with family or for personal reasons, to maybe seek out some kind of co-working space or cafe and test the internet. It's not always the most reliable with
Yes.
accommodations.
Right. Yep. Understandable. So coming to language, I know you said that people do speak English, but then there are also people that do not speak English. So do you think it will be easier to know a little bit about the language, know a few phrases, and or will English throughout will do?
I think yes to should a few phrases, yes to every country you visit. I think as a native English speaker, it's less and less enticing for me to learn a language because the common language between international people is often English. But
Yes.
to say that, I think it's a respect to a place you're visiting and to remember that you're entering their country. There should
Mm-hmm.
not be an expectation that everyone speaks English. You have to have patience and be willing to do some like hand signals. Where's the train? These kind of things. And it's simple, just ask how to say thank you. So you can use the word merci there as well. I say with a bit of
Um,
maybe a more Canadian French accent. But the proper way to say thank you is blagodaria, which again, probably not pronouncing perfectly. And just like dobra den, like saying good morning.
uh,
And dobra is good. So even with taxi drivers, they would say
yeah.
in Bulgarian, can I drop you off here? And I'd be like, dobre, dobre. It's good. Okay, ciao, you can use as well. I would also, with many European countries as well, if you
Okay.
need something a little bit more complex answered in English, looking for someone who maybe is like 35 and under. Of course, we don't want to ask people their age, but I think
Yeah.
with the influx of Netflix and social media and the
Mm-hmm.
accessibility to learn English, that younger generation would be easier to help you. They do learn English in school. It's just a matter of how people are practicing it and how
Hmm.
often. They also speak a lot of Spanish too. So in school, they can choose to learn Spanish or German.
Okay.
Most people choose Spanish. So if you speak Spanish, sometimes you might actually find a Bulgarian who doesn't speak English but speaks Spanish. So depending where you're coming from. But yeah, again, in Sofia, you're in a tourist area, you're in a city, you're in a place where there's multi-nationalities as well. So I found in Sofia it's really easy. And then in Bansko, again, it is a tourist hill. Depending on which part of the town you're in, there's English speakers. But again, just have some patience and to point, but overall, it's quite easy to get around with English.
Perfect. I think we're coming towards the end of this talk. So I'd like to know that what did
Mm-hmm.
you like the most about your trip?
Yeah, I think with Sofia, one of my favorite parts about the city and what draws me to want to return is it's got such a different type of architecture where it tells history through its architecture with
Wow, okay.
parks also being there's a lot of parks within the city. So if you're just looking for a place to kind of people watch, just take a
Uh-huh.
break, maybe take a book, you can drink in public. So if you're someone who wants to enjoy a beer outside, this is something that's really easy to do. Again, the
Okay.
transportation is just so seamless in the city to get around with Google Maps. You can look up how to get there and it's really easy to pay.
Yes.
And the food scene. Sofia is kind of that city where it's just, I think it's a bit of a hidden gem. People maybe have misconceptions about
Yeah.
Bulgarians and this feeling of Eastern Europe, and that obviously there's very complex history. And I'm not going to speak on that because I'm not a historian. And I myself am learning so much about the history still. But I find Eastern Europe people to have maybe a cold exterior, but they're really warm once you say
Okay.
hi to them. So if you just say hi, they're warm back. You just have to break that ice a little bit
Nice.
for a
Yeah.
second. So yeah, I just think in general, like Sofia's got such a relaxed energy to it as well. Like people just they work and they live, and maybe compared to my Western upbringing, we work, and then we
Yep.
try and live when we're retired. Whereas there, they make their money and they spend their money, and they really just live life to the maximum. Whether it's just sitting and having a coffee and just living in the present moment. So I definitely love to adapt that kind of culture of the Bulgarians.
Yep. Same. And what about experience in band school?
Yeah, Bansko is again just such a different experience because you're surrounded by international people. I wouldn't say there we're really connected with locals or Bulgarians besides
Mm-hmm.
if they're service providers or restaurant owners. Again, my experience with them was like really lovely, and the energy of the town is really relaxed and quaint and quiet. If you're looking for a place to like just slow your energy down, kind of find your own flow of
Okay.
life, it's a really great place, but you're going to be mixed with a lot of different cultures if you're diving into that digital nomad scene. So it just depends who's there at the time. There's some people who are now living there full time. So they're
Okay.
not nomads anymore, but they were at one point international travelers. So yeah, it just depends who's living there and what time of year you're going, but be open to meeting a new group of people and a rotating group of people too, which is really cool.
Yep. It sounds definitely sounds very lovely, both the places. Yeah, my
Very different, but like for different reasons.
yeah, definitely. There's a very fascinating contrast between the both, I think, which also complements each other. So it's definitely
Hmm.
very fascinating to see.
Yeah, I think Bansko is an interesting concept of someone seeing an opportunity to bring a group of international people together with a beautiful landscape. And it has its own offering
Okay.
of being a destination, but it's really about how you make your time there. Whereas I think when we explore cities as travelers, there's more presented to us to
Yes.
participate in. So there's a lot more of offerings and we get to choose. Whereas when visiting any kind of more rural place, you have to choose your adventure. So you have to choose to go on the hike or to explore the outdoors a
Right.
bit more versus a festival's happening and you just jump into the festival.
Right.
You have to create your own,
Yeah,
choose your
that's
own adventure.
yeah, that sounds great. Okay, my next question is a little more hypothetical question, but if you had to repeat your trip again, knowing the perspective that you do have now, what are other things you'll change about it?
Ooh, in my dream scenario, or this is more speaking to long-term travelers, I'd probably
Okay.
do like a month in May in Sofia.
Okay.
and a month of June in Bansko. So you would cross over the Digital Nomad Festival where there's a ton of international people coming. But I also try not to regret anything. So I don't know if I would change anything besides, yeah, just keep exploring the city and be open to finding more local opportunities. So perhaps even like physical activities, so running clubs or
Yes.
trying to, I don't know, even taking Bulgarian lessons to meet a local or participate in a local fitness class or something, just to immerse myself even more into the city. But I don't want to regret anything. So yeah, I think if people wanted to go there, they can talk with me about what their interests are and how
Yes.
we can maximize their trip.
Perfect. Perfect. That's a great answer. Right. Now, my next question is that can you tell us, just top of your head, okay, any tips that you'd like to give to the travelers visiting there?
Yeah, I think with any European destination, especially for first time travelers, make sure that you have some kind of data on your phone. So
Okay.
access to internet. It makes getting around a lot easier and scoping out restaurants or
Yes.
transportation. I think also I always suggest doing a walking tour within your first few days. And the great thing about walking tours is they're often free. And what it
Right.
means by that is it's tip based. So
Okay.
Sofia has Sofia walking tours. They're fantastic. They're offered in multiple languages. And this always gives you this kind of, it gives you this outline of the city where you're like,
Okay.
what does that building mean? It tells you what the building means. So then next time when you pass it on your way to grab a coffee, you're like, I know what that building means.
Yeah.
And I think just also with accommodations, I've stayed at many hostels as well. So really ask yourself what kind of trip you're looking for. So if you're someone who's a bit more introverted or homebody, maybe finding a private room or accommodations where you can really recharge your
Right.
batteries. But if you're a social animal and super extroverted, jump on a pub crawl, stay in a dorm room. And if you want to meet friends,
Mm-hmm.
you have to be willing to say hi. So don't expect 10 people to come and say hi to you. If you want to make friends, you have to make a
Yeah.
friend. So you have to be the one to maybe say, hi, I'm Anna from Canada. Will you be my friend? And it's awkward, but then 10 minutes later you forget about it. Yeah, I think you have to put yourself out there a little bit, and it's like a first date over and over again. Even if it's not romantic, it's like you've got to put yourself out there to make friends and to meet
Yeah.
people whether local or international.
Yeah, I mean, of course, it will also make your journey more memorable when you have so many stories from different types of people. So those are some great
Yeah.
set of tips. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, I have one last question. So I know sometimes, as you said, the stomach doesn't know that you're in a different country. So you might drink something, eat something, and get sick. How accessible is medical stores or being in a hospital for tourists? If you need some basic medicine,
It's
do you need prescription or something?
It's so funny you asked. I actually did visit a Bulgarian hospital, not for a
Okay.
good reason. A family friend got in a serious accident. So I've been in the
Okay.
Bulgarian hospitals. Pharmacy, super accessible. People spoke English to access things like your general pain medicine or allergy
Mm-hmm.
medicine was something I had to access. Really good. Or if you need any kind of supplement or vitamin, saying something a little bit more like a dentist or a
Okay.
dermatologist. I can't speak to that. There's a public system and a private system. So if you had an accident, you can definitely visit
Mm-hmm.
the public hospital, but it's a public hospital, so it's not
Right.
as well funded. They're a bit older, the buildings. I think the doctors and overall the medical team is really good in Bulgaria, but some of their facilities just don't quite have the same
Uh,
funding that we might see in Western Europe. So just not the top of the notch technology and kind of pristine
yes.
hall type settings. But that being said, if you have the budget, you can pay for a private type of medical support. So there's lots of hospitals
Okay.
in Sofia. Bansko has like I believe a small clinic slash hospital.
Okay.
So do be careful if you're doing some extreme sports there that you're not near the the most major hospital
Uh-huh.
and stuff. And then just always make sure that you have travel insurance. So I would, especially if you're someone who likes to do extreme sports, make sure that you're covered in whatever way you need to be.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, that's great. Medical supplies and all those things are something that most tourists look for in cities. So that's great. Is there anything I haven't asked you that you want to talk about?
Oh gosh, I think we've covered it all today. I
Yeah.
think if I can reiterate, reach out to travelers if you see even a content creator who's made stuff. Continue to support local independent people. So I really encourage folks to do Airbnb or booking.com and try and find local hosts versus a chain hotel, and find those kind of local tour guides and opportunities to engage with people on a more intimate level.
Right.
Of course, reach out to me if they have questions about where to stay and what to do and when to go, because I think that makes a difference as well. But I
Yes.
think we covered it all. We got the food part, so that was my favorite part. So
Right. It was wonderful getting to know Bulgaria through your eyes, through your perspective. And it really motivated me, inspired me to go to these places, especially Bansko, because I really like off-road adventures. I'm kind of introverted, so I like places like
mm,
those. But it was lovely knowing about both these places from you. So thank you so much for joining us and telling us about all these beautiful places.
thank you so much for having me. And if anyone's interested in joining, I have a travel community which connects
Uh-huh.
locals and experts together. So you can reach to some Bulgarians as well as people who are these digital
That's
nomads
great.
living in Bansko, and to really ask for these tips and advice as they go. But yeah, you made a good point. If you're introverted, Bansko is definitely more of
Yes.
your kind of quaint, remote place to enjoy Bulgaria.
Great. So I hope you have wonderful travel from now on, and you also have a lot more stories to share with us. So thank you once again for joining us.
Yes.
Okay, bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Bye. Ciao.
Ciao.